economy will shrink in the course of 2023. And then weren't that different compared to many others when it comes to the inflation, because inflation is just...
But restoring price stability when inflation is high can require measures that are not popular in the short term.
Okay. Hello, I'm Christopher Crystal with Financial Stockholm, and welcome. Today is Monday, January 16th, 2023. And this is what we're seeing from Scandinavia and our views on the market. Not to give you advice, but just to give you what we're seeing and what we think. So we start the year now with a new Swedish Fed head. So the Swedish Riksbank, we departed from Stefan Ingves, and I believe his 17 years as head of the Swedish Riksbank, and we have a new head, and we'll see what the new direction is. But it'll be an interesting period to see what they're thinking about inflation, because we see continued talks about inflation, and that has to do also with the amortiseringskrav, or the mortgage amounts that we need to pay when you're buying a house or an apartment, and what levels people can lend at, so as not to upset the inflation. Because if the higher the inflation, of course, and we've had quite a bit, we'll see the rate cycle continue upwards. We're also the head of the European Council, and this is more kind of a perfunctory sort of title. We're going to be running different things for the European Council, and but we're the host this year. So we had a press conference. We had our own sign language person, we were doing it in English, so that the rest of Europe can understand what we're talking about. Germany also had a little bit of a political struggle today. Their defense minister is transitioning, and that's because she never really got up to speed with the military. Did not really familiarize herself with the levels of the military, and has been very slow in sending any weapons over to the Ukraine. So that's so she's being replaced, and then we have our ongoing process with NATO. Looks like Turkey's going to put it on the back burner until maybe the summertime. So we will probably not be a member of NATO until June or July. And this gives Sweden time to discuss with Turkey about the PKK members who Turkey wanted us to extradite. And then there's been this protest in front of the Turkish embassy, where people held up mannequins, or Erdogan and they were, doing different things that he considered to be illegal. So he's called for Swedish ambassadors and so forth. So we'll see what happens there. But in the meantime, Sweden continues to act as if it is part of NATO, and is acting as a member, and looks to send the weapons over to Ukraine. But before we move there, we do have a Swedish politician. So the Center Party has taken an individual that at one point was far from center. In fact, he was a bit of an angry young man, 24 and 28 years ago, and was involved in several different assault cases, and he was investigated for that. I failed to mention this when he was being nominated as the candidate. This came out in an interview on the TV with the Swedish press. And so his name is, of course, Mayram Domenko, I think is the last name pronunciation. But he is he's up for a little bit of a kind of windy weather, and it'll be some rough seas. So if we look at NATO and Sweden, we look to continue. We'll be sending over missiles, we'll be sending over troop trucks, as well as armored troop trucks. And then Germany is saying that before any Leopard tanks can be sent, they have to give the approval, even if they've already given them away. So if Poland has Leopard tanks, they can't just send the Leopard tanks. They have to have German approval to send those. So we'll see what happens. Although on the other hand, the UK is saying they're sending over the Challengers, and there are no Abrams tanks from the US going, but what you have instead are the troop transports, which are armored. Those will probably go, and those can operate against Russian tanks. And then what's important to note there, though, is that we've had a very warm winter. And so at this point, the tanks may not be the best object to be sending because they're sinking into the mud. Since the mud is not frozen like it usually would be at this time of year, the tanks are getting bogged down in the mud. And so it's probably better to be sending the troop transports. There's a number of propaganda pieces coming out talking about Russian troops, the amount, the equipment, the amount that have been injured. Some people will say 100,000, other people will say 30,000. You did have von der Leyen talk about the Ukrainian injured, and she did mention 100,000. So it's not clear, but the Ukrainian people are clearly the ones who are suffering in this latest missile onslaught by the Russians over the weekend. There was something like 80 missiles fired. There was a missile that went into an apartment complex and severely injured and killed people, civilians. But apparently this was shot down by Ukrainian-Russian missile defense technology. And that's what caused the missile to crash into the apartment complex instead of hitting the electrical grid, which is what they were aiming for. So it's awful no matter how you look at it, but that's war. And so we're far away from the peace table, but we'll see what happens. There was also a Wagner Group defector. So you've had an individual from the Wagner Group. He's defected over into Norway. He's looking for asylum, and he wants to testify against Yevgeny Prigozhin, who was the head of the Wagner Group, excuse my pronunciation, and he's willing to testify about the war crimes. Not that that'll do much until the war is over, but we'll see. So if we look at energy, which is our main concern here in Sweden, Greta Thunberg was spending the weekend in Germany, just outside of Dusseldorf, to Lützerath. There's a small town that has been purchased to be turned into a coal mine, and Greta was there to protest turning it into coal. So as Germany has lost its nuclear by its own admission, it shut down its own plants. And then, of course, losing the Nord Stream 1 and 2, they need to go back to coal. And so in doing this, they, they're looking at the town to turn it into a coal mine. And so you have a number of protesters protesting the destruction of the town. And Greta was there to protest with them and to say that they should not do this. Now, it's not clear if she went over to any nuclear power plants to get them restarted, but that's what happened. And that is a focus here in Sweden. But again, we have our concerns, and we're going to be starting up our own nuclear power. And right now, it looks like 2 to 3 that are going to be SMR, but it'll be at 2 different locations. And then in terms of crypto, everybody's looking at crypto, but the Swedish government seems to have cut down on its approach towards it. Bolagsverket is not letting companies open up that are crypto companies. So you're still able to open up different companies, just so long as they're not crypto. The energy that we're encountering here in Sweden, the rebuild within Ukraine will be of significant importance, and that's over 350 billion euros. This will go on. We'll see discussions perhaps this week as we have the World Economic Forum ongoing in Davos. So maybe there'll be talk about Ukraine. Maybe we'll see how BlackRock would look to do some lending. But the companies that we would have that would probably participate would be, it would not likely be Vattenfall, our power company, but it would be more likely Skanska, our construction company, and maybe our heavy equipment like the Volvo vehicle manufacturers. Those would be involved in some of the rebuild for the Ukraine. Then perhaps on pharmaceuticals. But other than that, that's what we're seeing here in Sweden. Of course, we look to see if we can get some detailed updates on the trade in stores. Those figures should be coming out shortly, and we'll see what the Swedish Riksbank is going to do with the interest rates. So with that, I wish you a great rest of the day. Remember to subscribe, and of course, you can always make money in the market, whether you're short or whether you're long, and whether you're strategic or whether you're tactical. There's always money to be made. And so we'll wish you happy success in the market. And thank you very much. Bye.